Hey, how's it going? Today I'm answering the question, can I run after meniscus surgery? This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line. Okay, this is such a common question. It is a top hit on my website, and I got this question in my question box on Instagram. If you are ever wondering about certain things, you can always go to my Instagram, runDisneyDPT, and send me a question in the DMs. Or when I put up these question boxes, you can always put it in there. I know it's limited space, so you might have to just DM it to me. But that's often where I get a lot of the ideas for this podcast. Okay, so if you are wondering if you can run after meniscus surgery, this is the podcast episode for you. If you're wondering if you tore your meniscus, what a meniscus tear is, how you tear a meniscus, symptoms of a meniscus tear, that's another episode. Go back to episode 27 of Running to the Castle, this podcast, and I answer those questions there. To stay efficient, I am not answering those questions here today. I am talking specifically about the surgery. So you have a meniscus tear, your doctor has confirmed you have a meniscus tear, and you have decided that you're looking at options with surgery. So if you are looking at surgery, there are two types of meniscus surgery you could have: meniscus repair or a meniscectomy. So meniscus repair, short and dirty of it, is the surgeon sews back together your meniscus. Meniscectomy, short and dirty of it, is the surgeon just cleans up the meniscus, takes out the tears by just chomping it away. It literally looks like a Pac-Man chomping away as it's going through the game. So, how long does it take to recover from meniscus surgery? So that will depend on which type of surgery you have. And I should actually go back. Meniscus repair surgery, this can only be done when the tear is in the part of the meniscus that has blood supply. If there's no blood supply, the meniscus cannot repair even though it's been sewn back together. This type of surgery is typically done through a few small incisions in the knee. Same with the meniscectomy. You have keyholes where the doctor goes in, and one's a camera so they can see what they're doing, and then one or two are where they put the actual tools where they're doing the work. So that's how the surgeries are done. So how long does it take to recover from a meniscus repair? So I just said that the recovery will depend on what type of surgery you have. So the meniscus repair, that's where the surgeon sews back together your meniscus. So this is a longer recovery than a meniscectomy because of the nature of the surgery. Since in a meniscus repair, the surgeon's sewing the fibers of the meniscus back together, you actually have to stay off your leg for a minimum, typically it's a minimum of 6 weeks. That 6-week time frame allows that area that the surgeon just sewed back together, allows it to heal. So then you're on crutches for at least 6 weeks and non-weight bearing. So you're not putting weight through that leg. Well, I should say typically it's non-weight bearing. There is the occasion that the surgeon will let you put some weight through it, and that's very specific to the surgeon. So over time, after you've gone through that partial or complete non-weight bearing period, you will be allowed to progressively walk with more weight through that leg and do more activity. The typical recovery period after a meniscus repair is 6 months. And that's not like when you're back to running. Like, if you have meniscus repair surgery on April 1st, don't sign up for an October 1st race because, yes, that is 6 months, but you're not racing then. That 6 months is just for the surgery healing time and everything that goes along with the fact that you just had surgery. In general, recovery takes time. It takes 8 weeks for the tissue in your knee to heal from being irritated from having the surgery itself. It takes 3 months for a muscle to gain strength from day one of any strength program, and it takes about 3 months to gain endurance once you start running again. So that's your recovery time from a meniscus repair. How long does it take to recover from a meniscectomy? If you had a meniscectomy, total recovery time is about 4 months. This is a quicker timeline because you aren't missing out on those 6 weeks of not putting weight through your leg after surgery like you would for that meniscus repair. Even though this is a different surgery, the same timeline of events takes place for healing. So it takes 8 weeks for the tissue in your knee to heal from being irritated from having the surgery itself. It takes 3 months for muscle to gain strength, and it takes about 3 months to gain endurance once you start running again. So when can I run after a meniscus repair? After a meniscus repair, the earliest you should begin a return to running program is 3 months post-op. Typically, the actual timeline is closer to 4.5 months on average. And this information is from my professional experience as a physical therapist who help runners with knee problems. So over all of the people that I have helped get back to running after having a meniscus repair, the timeline is closer to 4.5 months. Some took 6 months before they were able to start running, and some were quicker to that 3 months. Everybody's different. Please do not compare yourself to somebody else's timeline. In order to start a return to running program after a meniscus repair, you need good strength on examination, no feelings of your knee giving way, controllable post-activity swelling, no swelling at rest, and no pain. So controllable post-activity swelling, I want to point this out. In the first year to 18 months after any kind of knee surgery, and the more in-depth the knee surgery, the longer the timeline. So it could actually be 2 years for some things. But you are going to have swelling after doing activity, and it will be any kind of activity. The first time you go to do a really easy exercise after having surgery, your knee's going to swell. And then eventually your knee's going to get used to that. And then it's going to swell after something that's more challenging. And then your knee's going to get used to that. And then it's going to get swelling after something even more challenging. And that's because your body thinks that this new activity, as light of an activity as it seems to be, your body after surgery thinks that there's going to be an issue, thinks that this is a harmful movement, activity, procedure. And so it creates the inflammatory reaction. It's very normal. I want to point it out because I have so many clients that say, well, now that I'm doing all this activity, like I didn't have swelling before I started rehab, but now my knee's swelling all the time. Completely normal. It will go away. Your body has to adjust and get used to the activity. If it's not going away within a certain amount of time, and I go through that timeline with my clients, then it means you're doing too much. You know, you'll go in these waves of swells a bit right after the activity, and then you ice or heat and rest for a certain amount of time, goes down. And then you go to do the thing again, swells up a little bit, but not quite as much as last time. Do the ice, the heat, do a little bit of rest, it comes back down. And you go in these ebbs and flows. Okay, I just wanted to point that out there. The return to running program, it includes a variety of strength exercises, plyometric exercises like hopping, to mimic how many times your feet touch the ground during a running period. And during the return to running program, once you can successfully, meaning pain-free and controllable after activity swelling, you can start jogging at half a mile and progressively increase by 10% each week with a taper week, meaning a deload week every 5th week. If you've been in my world for any length of time, you know that all of my training plans follow the 10% rule, and all of my training plans every 5th or 6th week have a deload week, okay? And you may have picked up on in there that you can start jogging at half a mile. Yep, half a mile. Maybe a mile. I have two ways of determining how far somebody can go on their very first run. The first one is called the living room test. I created this test myself based on Brigham and Women's return to running program protocol that I follow exclusively and have followed since it came out. And then I have adapted to create a test to test my clients' tolerance to running, so I know exactly how far up to 1 mile they could go out on their first run. The second way to tell is you could do half the time that you can walk without pain. So if you can walk 30 minutes without pain, you could go and run for 15 minutes. Those are two ways to determine how far to go or how long to go on your first run back after meniscus surgery, for example. Okay, when can I run after a meniscectomy? So after a meniscectomy, the time to return to running varies. Typically, the return to running program is at about 3 months. So in order to start a return to running program after meniscectomy, you need the same things you needed for after the meniscus repair. That's good strength on examination, no feelings of the knee giving way reported, controllable post-activity swelling, no swelling at rest, and no pain. The return to running program again includes a variety of strength exercises and plyometrics like hopping to mimic how many times your feet touch the ground during a running period. During the return to running program, once you can successfully, meaning pain-free and controllable after activity swelling, you can start jogging at 0.5 miles, increase by 10% each week, and include a taper week every 5th or 6th week, like what my training plans all cover. So the guidelines to start running after a meniscectomy are the same as after a meniscus repair, and the steps to take are the same. It's just at a different timeline. That's the biggest thing between a meniscectomy and a meniscus repair. And is there anything I can do to speed up my recovery from meniscus surgery as a runner? So some things to do to help speed up the process are make sure that you control pain and swelling. Strength training, doing other cardio, stretching, eating right, and following the directions of your surgeon and your physical therapist. So although doing these things, they don't jump your timeline earlier than the minimum 3 months after surgery for the meniscus repair, it will make it so that it's closer to the 3 months than it is to the 6 months. Okay? And strength training, if you've been in my world any length of time, you know I don't mean lots and lots of squats on a painful knee. There are other things to be doing. Other cardio, that could be things like riding a bike, swimming, using an elliptical machine to keep your cardiovascular endurance up so that when you are cleared to start running, you just have to battle the fact that you had knee surgery and not battle your breathing and your heart rate as well. If you can keep your cardio up while you're not allowed to run, it will make a very smooth transition back into running. And I should say there's one other thing in regards to stretching after meniscus surgery, making sure that you don't keep your knee bent all the time after surgery. When I was a physical therapist, I worked in a clinic and it was owned by surgeons. So sometimes, one of the surgeons would come upstairs. Our clinic was upstairs above the surgeons. He'd come upstairs and he would ask me questions about the rehab of one of our mutual patients. And so one time I had this person who had a meniscectomy and he had it 2 weeks prior, and typically we want therapy started within 2 days, so within 48 hours of having surgery. The patient himself thought that was too soon, and thought that he was misremembering when he was supposed to get started. So he chose 2 weeks instead of 2 days. And when he came in, his knee was so bent. He couldn't, even if he was allowed to because he had a meniscectomy, he couldn't put his foot on the ground because his knee was so bent. And that was because he had been told to elevate his leg, so he was keeping his leg elevated on pillows, but having the pillows stacked up underneath his knee. So then his leg made this, wasn't quite 90-degree bend. I think it was a 30-degree bend. Maybe no, 25-degree bend. 25-degree bend in his knee because he had kept a pillow under it for so long. Well, the surgeon came upstairs, so I guess we had the evaluation on, let's say, Tuesday, and the surgeon had a follow-up with the patient on Wednesday, and the surgeon, while the patient was still in the office, came upstairs to, not so politely, tell me that I wasn't doing a good job because the guy's knee was at a 5-degree bend and couldn't get it all the way straight. And I looked at the surgeon, I go, "Oh, 5 degrees, that's awesome." And the surgeon was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, yesterday it was a 25-degree bend, so that means he gained 20 degrees overnight just by the simple things we worked on yesterday." The look on his face. However, this is all to say, don't put a pillow underneath your knee, keeping it bent. Yes, it's going to be more comfortable in the short term if you keep if you keep your knee bent. Long term, it's going to take a heck of a time to get that knee straight. You know, I said he improved by 20 degrees overnight. Yes, getting those initial 20 degrees or so is really, really quick, but those last 5 degrees took us another 2 months to get his knee all the way straight. So start off with it staying straight the majority of the day. Don't let that knee go bent because you can't run on a flexed knee, on a bent knee. It needs to be straight. So if we just spend 8 weeks trying to get it straight, now of course we worked on other things too. Working on strength helped, working on stretching helped, but he was delayed in returning to activities that he wanted to do because he couldn't start it until he could get that knee straight. Okay, that is it for answering that question. Can I run after meniscus surgery? The answer to that is yes. The timeline for it depends on what kind of meniscus surgery you have. And other things that go into play that I didn't really talk about here are going to be how fit were you beforehand? What was the most recent run you had done before surgery? Because if it's been 5 years, you're not going to start running 6 to 9 months after the surgery. It's going to take longer than that. But if you're running right up until surgery, it's going to be shorter than that.
As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.